Afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's FileMaker webinar. My name is Mike Crook. I'm the marketing manager here for FileMaker in the UK, and I have with me Kieran Saunders, our FileMaker product specialist.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, good afternoon, shall I say.
So today, Kieran's going to be getting going very shortly with a presentation all on FileMaker, the FileMaker training series. This topic is all about relationships. Before he gets going with that, I'd just like to say if you have any questions during the course of the session, feel free to ask them using the questions panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll do our best to address as many of those as we can towards the end. We'll also be running a few polls during the course of the session. Please interact with those. They give us great feedback and help us to improve this in the future for others. So without any further ado, I shall hand over to Kieran to get started.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, today, so the agenda is mainly about relationships, but just to start off, we're just going to use the Invoice starter solution, which comes with every copy of FileMaker Pro and Pro Advance, just to show you how relationships and the tools to view relationships portals are used, and just to give you a bit of an idea of how they're actually looking in a quite nice solution. We'll just be very quickly going into bringing in some spreadsheet data and creating fields and the relevant fields to relationships, and then going into some options for primary keys, and I'll explain what that means in a minute, understanding and creating relationships, and then showing those related records. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the starter solution, Invoices. Like I say, that it comes with the product, and I'll show you how to get there now. So within FileMaker, I've got the Invoice starter solution already up here, and it's populated with some data. I'll just show you how you get to there from the product. It's from File, New from Starter Solution, and then within the dialog box that comes up, we've got some fabulously really quite good looking sort of solutions. They're all open, they're all open for you to develop and to start with, and as a learning resource. The one we're after is Invoices there. We just save that onto the desktop and open up. You can see it's exactly the same file as I've got here on the right, but they're all empty. So you'll have to start putting in your own records. You can put in your company name and information and logo into there, go into customers and start either importing that information through a spreadsheet or manually typing out your customers, whichever way you wish. Filling out the products the same way, importing or putting in your products or services into the system, and then you'll be able to go and create some invoices on those too. So let's just bring over the actual existing one here. Okay, so I've put in some details about the customer here, and I've got I've got a chart on the right-hand side that's showing me the invoices over the year, the value versus value. And I've got some information here about whether they've been paid, unpaid, all of the invoices. And this tool here is called the portal tool. You can see there's slightly different colors every line. And this is showing some related records, and it's showing them in a tool called Portal. So if I go into the layout mode, I'll just show you what it looks like. So it's just a box there. It's that tool here. And within the top line is the fields that you want to have then be repeated, but with the relevant data for the related records. So it's got to up here, and we'll be building this all in a minute anyway from scratch. But the tool is up here in the taskbar. When you're in layout mode, all the tools are up here, and there's the portal tool there. Okay, so let's see how else it's used within the solution, the portal tool. We go to the customers again. This is a list view. This isn't a portal, so this is a list view here. This is just a way of viewing the data, whether one record at a time or within a list. So this is just a list view. But then when we get into the form view, as we can see up here, view as, it's changed to a form view, so just one record at a time or one customer. And we could say that we've got two portals here, one for invoices that are unpaid and one for invoices that are paid, that allow you to then go straight into those relevant invoices and have a look at what they bought and what the tax was and so on. Okay, so there's several different ways they're used here. I'm not sure if they used in the product pages. Actually, yeah, there is one there. So inventory orders, we can track how many times we restock this product. So let's have a look at actually have a look at the relationship graph here. So if we go into File, Manage Database, this is where all the information for FileMaker is stored within tables. So we have the tables that are going down. So we have the information about the customers, the products, and the orders, and then the sort of related joining records between invoices and those orders and customers called invoice data. So in the next tab along, we've got the fields. So these are the sort of within those tables, you've got the actual bits of information you want to collect about that object. So for customers, of course, you would have the company, the name, first name, last name, and address details, and so on. So within the relationships tab here, we can see how this all sort of connects together. Of course, FileMaker being a relational database, this is the relationship graph. This is how you relate information together. So we've got, let's have a look. So we've got customers. It's always good to start with customers. And I can't zoom in on this, but if you can see within this line here, we've got a solid line, and then we've got what we call a crow's foot on the other side, which is notating a many. So we've got one customer has many invoices. One invoice has many product called data here, but it could be invoice line, and then going over to a product. So a product can be part of many invoices, many invoice lines. Okay, so let's roll up from that. Just while I've got it open, I just wanted to quickly show off our ability to put these solutions into different platforms. So I've got this on my server, and I just want to very quickly show this within a browser. So exactly the same file, invoices with data, and we can see that we can get into these into the solution via a web browser, Chrome in this point, and use the file in almost exactly the same way. Okay. Okay, so that's so just hopefully that's given you an overview of relationships and how they're working within a solution. Now let's sort of dive back down again into and how you get that done, and what are the different field types, what are the different bits of data that you collect, and how does that relate to relationships. So every field in a FileMaker database must have a specific data type, so you can see them there on the left. Either text, number, date, time, timestamp, which is a combination of date and time, so it's a stamp exactly when it was. A container, which is a fabulous little container, a field type that does what it says on the tin. It contains things, documents, PDFs, videos. It doesn't care what it is. It will contain anything and contain it against that record. So say against a product page, you can put an image of that product in there. Against maybe some kind of service, you could take a picture of the work done as proof of that work being done and have that against the record. So lots of different ways of using containers, not just documents. And the last two help with the automation of your system. So you can calculate things as you can in a spreadsheet. For example, you can use sum and total and so on. You can do mathematical calculations, but you can also do them on dates. You can even do calculations on a container, so you can find out how large an image it is, or when it was taken, for example. Lots of different things you can do with calculations. And a summary, very useful for aggregate data within reporting. So again, you could do a sum, but it works very well in reports that there's a sum based on that found set, we call it. When you do a find and you want to find all orders in this quarter, you would use a summary field to then total up the total invoice amount or the total cost, whatever it may be. So they're very useful. Allows you to best store and retrieve that data, indexing, and to make that as fast as possible. And the different there's different ways of sorting text and numbers, of course. If you were to put numbers into a text field, they wouldn't sort as you would imagine it. They wouldn't sort through the number order. So it's very important to get the right type for the right type of data. So let's just analyze text a little bit. Text is almost the default, so numbers can go into text, date can go into text, almost all of the data can be stored as text. Yeah, so that's if you're ever in any doubt, you can always use a text field. You could always change it at a later date. It's one of the really unique things about FileMaker is that if you change the date type, you don't lose that data. There's no really ill effects. So my advice, if you're in doubt, use a text field. And just a note that one text field can store approximately 2 GB of value. So that's 2,000 character, 2,000 characters worth. So more than enough for a notes field and so on. So numbers, of course, very useful when you're doing calculations, mathematical calculations. If you want to add sort of mixed data, then use a text field instead. And you can store over 400 digits to either side of the decimal point. So again, quite a large number. So dates, once you put a date type on a date, you have to enter it in a date format. If you don't, you'll get an error message. So it's a good way of making sure that the data going into the system is correct. In this case, dates. And we work out dates elapsed from the 1st of the 1st, 0001. So that's how they're worked out, just for your interests. But you can take days away from dates and go down to even hours and so on. So lots of things you can do there. The last type, containers, I think I mentioned quite a lot of that, but it will contain any kind of binary data. So by binary data, I mean images or signatures, PDF, videos, audio files, anything really. If you can imagine you opening that bit of data or a file in a web browser, and it displays, for example, a PDF or an image, we should be able to, within FileMaker on that container, be able to display it, as I was showing in that invoice data solution when I showed the picture of the product, because that was a JPEG, then that would display. You'd be able to see it within your solution. And you can store approximately 4 GB of binary data per container type. That's actually only correct now if you're storing that within the database file. If you allow FileMaker to manage your files on the server file system, it's just as big as your hard drives on your server. So that's only the case when you're storing it within the container field itself. For example, maybe you're storing it on FileMaker Go on your iPad. So that's one of the limitations there. So let's have a look at bringing in some data and how you would relate that. So I've got a little folder here that's full of some images and logos for me, and most importantly, I've got some spreadsheets in here. So I've got customers there with customer number, most importantly, and the rest of the details to go along with the customer, their name and address and so on. And then we've got the orders that customer have done. And again, importantly, we've got a works order number and a customer number that relates back to that other spreadsheet. So customer 9 here would relate back to customer 9 within the other spreadsheet. So we've got some kind of linking going on within these spreadsheets, which is great. So we can work and build on that. So let's bring that in. I'm going to bring in the customers file first, hover it over the FileMaker Pro logo and choose field names, and that will use that first line within the spreadsheet to build up my labels for my fields. So I'm just going to rename that and save that onto the desktop and bring that in. Okay, so that's brought in 47 records here of customers, and it's given me 2 layouts, 2 forms to work on, one being within the form view and one being in table view. But I can change these at any time to the different ones. I can change it to form view, to list view, and to table view within each one, but it just, as default, FileMaker just gives you 2 layouts so you can see that data. Okay, so let's bring in another bit of spreadsheet, or let's just look in the other side. Let's look in File Manage Database quickly to see what we've got. Okay, so we've got one table called customers. We've got the fields here that it's brought in, and you can see that it's FileMaker's recognized when it is strictly just a number field, and change that to number, and recognize when it's just text and chosen the text type. You can change these at any time, and I will actually, because I've just spotted that zip code there, or postcode. Maybe if you're an international company, you'd want that to be a textual field, so you can change that and change it at any time, like I was saying earlier. Okay, so we've got one table and we've got some data in it, and in the relationship graph we've just got the one table there. Now the point within FileMaker is that this is just a representation. This little box here is just a representation of the table. It's not the actual table itself. I could delete this, and conversely I could add. I can add another representation of that table here, and delete it, and it doesn't delete the data. So this is just it enables people to have little islands in the relationship graph. You don't have to have a big spider graph, we call it, where usually it's customers or contacts, and then you have hundreds of tables all coming out from it in a horrible spider graph looking like a spider's web. You don't have to have that now. You can have, I'll quickly build just a sort of dummy example here. You can have little islands of these relationships to build up different functionality within your system, for example, reporting, and so custom sort of reporting, custom work. You can also draw a little text box around it. This will be main system, and then change that within there. So you can sort of do some, if I just expand that a bit, you can make these bigger. And maybe we could have another one around here, change the color. And that could be the reports. Okay. So there's lots of different theories on how to build up this structure in this relationship, and I've dropped in into the handouts within GoToMeeting. I've dropped in a white paper. It's quite advanced, but it for those of you who are already there or want to expand upon this knowledge within the relationships, it's a good paper to read about the different methodologies, just in case you come up against them on the forums. The methodology I'm sort of showing you here is called the anchor buoy, where you have the main table on the left-hand side, and then you have 5, 6 buoys or anchors, or sometimes it's called a squid. If you can see it, looks like a kind of a squid if you had lots of them going off that way. So just some terms for you, throwing them out there just in case you do see them on the forums. But this is one way of building the system and also reporting or documenting it as you go. Okay, so let's actually delete these or remove them. We don't need these, just for an example. I'll just remove that, so I'm just back with my one customer example. Okay, so I'm going to need more than just one to do a relationship, of course. I've got my customers, but I've also got that other file that was the customer's order, so I'm just going to go into import file, import records from a file, and pick my other spreadsheet, that work order spreadsheet, and open that up and to bring it in. So this is the import dialog dialog box, import field mapping dialog box. On the left hand side here we have source, which is our spreadsheet. With the source fields, it's detected. You can move along through these to see the actual data, but it's recognized the columns in there and brought them in. And on the right hand side is where you want it to go. Well, at the moment it's just targeting towards the only current table there, which is customers, but we don't want that. We want a new table called works orders, which is again taking the name of the Excel file. You may need to rename these things if it's a nonsensical name there. Okay, so I've chosen a new table, but you can see the target fields here are just being F1 to F6. So it doesn't know what to call them. But if we go down to the bottom left-hand side here, we can say don't import the first record. It contains field names, and therefore, again, like I did with the drop and drag of the spreadsheet, FileMaker is building up the labels for my fields automatically. So I just have to go on the right-hand side here and import those, and it's brought in 1,400 work orders there. So that's great. I can see all them. They've all come in. So let's go in. If I just quickly go into layout mode, let's just change that layout 1 name to being customers, which is great. And I'm just going to manage these layouts and actually delete that middle one. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got customers and work orders now. Nice and clean. Actually, just let me, if you bear with me, I'm just going to try and increase my screen size, which I forgot to do. Let's just see if we can make that scale a little bit down for you. So you can see that a bit better if we're doing a bit of detailed work here. Okay, hopefully you can see that a bit better. Okay, so we've got two bits of sort of data in there. We can work on them. We can browse the records. We can do finds on them. I can find all the records that match Mark, the sales guy, and I can view his 13, customers, let's say, or sales that he's made. And I can also go into work orders and again, sort of maybe right click here or go into find mode here and actually find all the, I think there was lawn upkeep, let's say. So there's 482 records there that have that description. Okay, so we can do several things in there, but it's not connected until they're connected together. We can't do some valuable stuff really. It's still connected. It's still almost like two separate spreadsheets. So let's see how we fix that and how we put that in. So back into File Manage Database again. We can see we've got the two tables there. We've got the fields for both of those tables, and we can see that within these tables we've got these customer numbers. So this is where we need to link them up. So customers has a customer number field, and with the work orders, there's that linking customer number that links back to the customer, and that's the one we want to link up there. So it's just dragging it over and trying to match up with the field that you want to hit. If you make a mistake and you choose the wrong one, so if I just maybe I just make a mistake and go to works order has made a mistake, you can double click in this little blue box in the middle and then go and change the relationship here. So it includes customers equals customers numbers, which is the one we want. Lots of other types in here. You can filtering, maybe for reporting, you want to include some further information, maybe dates and whether date is higher or lower. And equijoin here at the bottom is where you just match all records, so maybe you just want to see all jobs for a particular record that are possible. Lots of different things you can do here, but just the most common one is where it's equal to. We can also, there's some further options down here where through the relationship you allow creation of records or deletion of records as well. So that's quite important to click. And in this case, I probably would, through customers, I would like to create related work orders and possibly even delete them. Okay, so that's the relationship sort of built up. The one thing that's missing is that within the customer table and I think within the work order table, we haven't got an auto ID set up. So let's have a quick look at that and see how we will go about that. First, I'm going to just go into the browse mode, have a look at customers, and we can see that we've got 47 records. So if I go back into that, just remembering that, if I go back to the customers table, I can see that it is just a number, but one thing I can do is go down to the options or double click here to bring up further options for that field. And the one thing I can do is put in a serial number there where the next value starts at 48, one after the total number of customers we got, and then incrementing by 1, and that should then start to give us an auto enter serial, so that customer number, when we create a new customer, becomes a unique number. We don't have to put a number in. FileMaker will deal with that sort of admin, if you like, for us, and it'll also help with the relationships as that will build up. Okay. So let's see that in action. So if we actually add a new record, we can see the next record is 48 there. We can give him a name, of course, and then as we create a new customer, you can see that number going up. Great. Okay, so we've got the serial numbers working, the ID fields. And let's go back to into the File Manage Database again and just have a look. We could do the same for works orders. But before I do that, I just need to have a look at the total number. So 1,441. So if we go into Manage Database, let's have a look at the works orders. And again, we could do the same thing here. Serial number starting 1 or 2, incrementing by 1. Great. Okay. So let's just head back into the keynote just to update you on some of these terminologies that I'm using. Before I do, I'm just going to Great, there you go. So let's just go over a bit of theory, some of the things that I've been going over here on a practical level. Let's go back to the theory a little bit and see what I was talking about. So obviously FileMaker is a relational database, and hopefully that makes more sense to you now. It provides a way of relating to or more, hopefully more, sets of data in order to reduce double entry. So double entry being people going out into the field, writing something on a piece of paper or Excel, coming back into the office, retyping it into somewhere, or creating a works order and retyping out the customer name again, where you've already typed it into the customer table, or somewhere in the customer part of the system. So it's trying to stop double entry of data, which obviously speeds up that process and also improves the consistency of that data. So I've been mentioning this one-to-many idea. So in this case, and this is one of the simplest relationship ideas, it's when you have one-to-many. So in this example, one farm would have many cows belonging to one farm. Nice and easy one, that one. Slightly more tricky one is the many-to-many. So again, you can imagine in an example of films, you have many films acting in many movies over their careers, and many movies having many actors. So you have a many-to-many type relationship there. So how you actually build these relationships up is the idea of a primary key. Now that's when I was setting up the serial number, that was part of what it means to have a primary key. It's a theoretical thing, but FileMaker gives you the tools in order for that to become always to happen, and FileMaker manages that. You don't have to think about it after you've set it up, but it's very good practice to understand what's happening and to set these up in your systems. Every single table should have a primary key in there to identify that record. So let's look at the sort of laws, if you like, or at least the top three. A primary key should have the following things about it. It should be unique for every record in the table. So let's pick on customers, it's a nice easy one. So a customer ID field, we're going to pick that as being our primary key, and it must be unique. So there can't be a customer 9 and then later on another customer 9 that is a different has different data in there. It's a different customer in effect. They all must have a unique they must all be unique. The other one is that it never changes and must never be empty. So that makes sense, right? You know, if you have customer 9, that ID shouldn't change to 10, and it can't be empty because that doesn't make sense either. So that's the sort of theory of primary keys. The other thing that I would add into that, just as an aside, is that generally you shouldn't put a primary key field on a form. It shouldn't be something that you need to display to a user. If you're finding you want to display that bit of data, it's not a primary key. You should just create another field that has that data. So for example, let's go to students and their student table. You may want in a school, and quite rightly, is to show a student some kind of student ID for whatever purposes, billing, printing out of paper at a printer. Maybe you need your student ID to show, and that's fine, but that's not a primary ID, even if it is unique and it never changes, never empty. Because you're using it in the real world, I would suggest that you should have a student ID field that's your primary key, that's just used in the system. No one ever sees it, but then you create a student, so I'm going to change the name, sorry, a student number for the primary ID, and then if you wanted to create a student ID that is used on the form, you can just create another field called student ID. A bit of a tricky one to explain over a webinar, that one, but hopefully that makes sense. Basically, don't show your primary keys on the form. So where these primary keys then link into, like in our example we just did customers to orders, a foreign key is something that points back to the primary key. So they're linked, but they don't have to be unique. So in this example here, you can assign a customer to an asset by entering the customer ID field into the asset table, which we'll do, and that'll create a link between the two tables using that ID. So when thinking about a one-to-many relationship, the many side will always contain the foreign key. So in the case of the cows and farms, the cow is the many side, many cows. That will contain the foreign key, so that will have a farm ID in that table. You will put one in, and then therefore you can link back to that farm. So what I've been showing, what I just showed, how to create a unique key that just increments by 1, so 5 becomes 6, becomes 7, and so on. That's all well and good and is fine when you're in a local area network. You've got 20 copies of FileMaker Pro and a few Go's, or WebDirect even creating records within connected to a server. But as soon as you have an iPad and you go offline, or for that matter, you take your laptop offline, you're doing some kind of work in the field, you're near a river or in the underground, wherever you may be, where you definitely cannot get an internet signal. Just incrementing by 1 is not going to work, because there may be other people, your 10 colleagues, doing exactly the same thing, and as they create new records, you're all going to be creating the same records as you go. So we've got a new function called getUUID, and that creates an extremely large number, 16-byte to 16-digit long character universally unique identifier, and that sort of makes it highly unlikely that as you create these records offline, they're going to match any other ID. Certainly within the systems and businesses that FileMaker fits into, sort of small, mediums, and so on. You're not talking about a bank and billions of records being created every day. Within the thousands, you're never going to create the same record. So yeah, so that's the one to look at too, and more as we go on, we're more and more sort of as a company recommending that you use this anyway as your primary IDs. Again, it just makes it much more unlikely that you're going to get any duplicate keys. Okay, so let's go back and look at that again, and hopefully maybe that'll make more sense to you as we go through. So let's go and have a look at the Manage Database part again. So again, we've got customers and orders. Within those, we've got these primary keys, the works orders number within the works order table, and the customer number being an auto entering serial being the primary key within the customers table. But again, as we're saying, if you look at the one-to-many, so just the line notates a 1. The crow's feet here denotes a many, so one customer has many works orders, many work orders have one customer. Within the many, you will normally you'll have to have the foreign key in there that links back. So in this case, customer 1 would link to all of the works orders that match customer 1, that would link back to that information in the customers. Okay, so that's fine. We've set up the relationship. Hopefully that's fine. What would be nice is to actually display those works orders. So let's go and have a look at how we do that. So we're on a form. We're on the, we will be on the customers table. Let's go back to customer 1, let's say, or it's not in sort order. Let's sort by the customer number. Oh, we start at 4 here. There you go. Okay, so go into layout mode, and then we want to select that portal tool. Draw a box and let go. So the dialog box that comes up is portal setup tool, and we want to show the related records from. And if this drop down was empty or grey, you'd know something was wrong, and you could go into Manage Database via this link to go and fix it. But in this case, we've got it right. Works orders appears, which is great. Lots of different options here, from a little scrolling bar. We'll do this because I like it, and I'll show it to you. There's a scrolling bar at the side. Maybe you've got at the moment we're showing, and actually let's show 5, let's say, initially 1 to 5 records. Then, of course, you may have 10 related records, you're going to need to scroll up and down through this tool to see them all. That's fine for this. I maybe talk about filtering the portals within this tool here later, but that's certainly possible. Okay, once we OK that, we now select which fields we want to appear in the top so that we can see them. So let's do all of the sort of relevant ones. So we've got the team leader, the date, the description and hours, and OK that. And what that does is just put those fields, they're individual fields that I can move around, but it puts them within the top row of this portal, the white area here of the portal. And we can move the portal around, the fields stay in there. They're sort of encapsulated, if you like. And we can see that it's sort of showing us a bit of information about this portal. It's coming from the data is coming from works orders, and it's showing 5 records. So let's see how this looks. Let me exit the layout. So great, it's showing related records. It's showing some of that data there. If we go to another customer, we can see that they've got quite a lot of related records here. And I'm scrolling down, but as I come out, the scroll bar disappears, which is very nice, very Mac sort of one of the related, one of the newest Mac OS has brought in this sort of functionality and list views. So that's great. One thing that the portal tool doesn't bring in, that sort of wizard, as you like, doesn't bring in the labels by default. So we're going to have to go in and just, that might be obvious from the data, but it might be nice to just give ourselves a bit of room at the top there. We could just use the text tool at the top here to type in those labels at the top, or you can double click on a field, and as you do, one of the options here is create label. Say OK, and that puts the label to the left of it, so you'll have to drag it up. It doesn't put it to the top, but you can start doing the labels like that. So we could quickly create a few labels and bring them over. So let's see how that looks. Okay, so that makes a bit more sense. So that's really nice. We're seeing some. We're seeing a customer. I mean, okay, it doesn't look very nice. I haven't done a lot of formatting on here, bringing a label or anything, but you got the idea. We've got some data from a customer, and on the right-hand side, using this tool, we can see that related data as we saw in the Invoice starter solution. Okay, so let's go and do one thing that is quite nice. As in the starter solution, we could select one of these rows of related data and then go to another layout to see that in more detail. So let's do that, and it's relatively different ways of doing it, but let's just do it this way. So I'm going to make some room there just on the right hand side, and I'm going to bring in a button. Small button in this case, and from that button I'm going to give it a label. I think I'm just going to give it a couple of arrows, or actually I think there is a nice little select this option here for pictures. I think there's we could use maybe this icon here instead. Make that a bit smaller, make the button a bit smaller. That's great. Okay, and from that I could make it do a simple action, which is go to related records. So from that script, what do we have to do? What are the actions on it? Well, I want to get related records from the work orders, and I want to display them in the works orders layout, one that was generated when we imported the works orders, and I just want to match the current record only. So let's see how that looks. So if I OK out of that and I save the layout, we've now got the button going down the side, and Glenn, 11 hours, tree pruning, and there you go. We go straight to that record with tree pruning, and then of course we could design maybe a navigation button up the top that does lots of different things, but one of them being some icons, let's say, one of them that goes back to, let's choose that icon there, make it a bit bigger. That again, single step here, but in this case we'll just go to layout. It's one of the script steps. It's a nice little navigation, it's a very simple navigation script, and go back to the customer's layout. So of course I could put other options or other navigation scripts on these other buttons to make them do different things, but we can see from here we can now go back to our customer file and again choose maybe another record to go and have a look at in more detail, and again go back to customers. So we could replicate a lot of this navigation at the top here, put in a logo. Maybe I will put in a logo just because it does suddenly make the solution come to light when you put a little logo in there. So we could start making this look a lot nicer, add some more functionality. We could maybe take the address information down a bit and do some formatting, something like that. And you can imagine within half an hour or so I could have quite a nice little system here. I could maybe have a map here of where the customer is and all the related records here. I could do some calculations to calculate how, maybe I'll do that now actually. Let's have a look at doing that. So maybe a calculation down the bottom here that would calculate how many hours we've been spending with this customer. It would be a nice little bit of business logic. So a couple of ways of doing that, but the way I'm going to do it is to go into Manage Database, go to the works orders, and I just want to create a summary of total hours. So total of hours, new field, which is great. And then back on this layout here on the customers, I can now go to when you open up the Field Picker tool. Sorry if you've not seen this before. Field Picker tool is a great way of adding fields onto the layout from within layout mode, but also you can go to related tables as well and drag those over. So I can grab that total hours field that we just created, bring that on over, and see how that looks. Okay, so you can see here, 40 hours with this customer. We can definitely see that this customer is more valuable to us, spending a lot more time with them, and a bit of dynamic sort of data there that we can add. One thing I didn't explain when we went into the relationships model, and I was saying if you made a mistake, you go into this box in the middle here. The option I was saying down the bottom here to allow creation of records, if you remember that. If we go back to the layout form, this is the functionality you get. So at the bottom of a portal, you get an empty row that you can start typing in. Okay, yeah, Mike did that job. And he hopefully you'd have a drop down in here, but he did some flower work, whatever it may be, and it took him 5 hours. So we can see that we can add related data within here as we go. So it's not only a viewing tool, but you can also sort of add some related records as you go in there. Okay, I think we'll stop there. It's a huge subject, relationships, but hopefully that gave you a good understanding or a good starting point of how to do that. So let me just summarize what we've done here. We had a look at the starter solution, so I showed how sort of the relationships are built up and how they look in a sort of a nice solution that's been pre-built and looks really nice. But we've then used two bits of Excel. We've dragged them into FileMaker. We created so 2 tables, customers and works orders, that already had a bit of the functionality that we needed. That was the numbers that were unique, that the related to, or works orders related back to the customers that did that work for them. We then created that relationship. We dragged it over, created the relationship. Within the fields, we made them auto enter serial numbers so that they would continue to be unique in the future as you created new records. We then sort of expanded a few layouts to include the related records for a customer. We put in this portal tool, selected a few fields to go in there. We created a bit of a navigation button so that we could go between the 2 forms here, customers and works orders, to see more detail potentially. You might have a notes field here and other stuff, pictures of the work done maybe. And we've also created a little summary field here so that we could have a bit of, I wouldn't call it reporting, but some intelligent about how many hours we've been spending with this customer here. Okay. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to open up a poll and see how much of that you've taken in. So just 4 questions. So which of these are types of fields that you can create within FileMaker? Can we create text, date, container, and number fields? Okay, everyone done? I'm just going to close the poll there and then share the results. So, yeah, most of you are absolutely correct. We can create all of them. Trick question, really. So we can create fields that contain text, date, container being the files, so PDFs, images, videos, sound, signatures, all the rest of them, or any old formats of files, and numbers, of course. Great, thank you. So I've just answered that question for you. I forgot that one was coming. Which types of information can be stored in a container field? Okay. Thank you for that. I'll just share those results. So yeah, possibly another trick question, but yeah, any type of file. The container field doesn't care what it is, including FileMaker files. Actually, it's quite a valid way of distributing a new solution. Sometimes is to upload a new copy of your solution into a FileMaker file itself, and have that being downloaded to a desktop or to the iPad. So yeah, any types of file, but like I was saying, it will display within the form a nice image of the first page of the PDF or multi-page of the PDF, and will display video and audio. We'll display video and pictures, and we'll play an audio file. Okay, so into the relationship bits. What are the 2 most common types of relationships? And actually, the only 2 I've described to you today. Okay, thank you for that. I'll just share those results. So yeah, the ones we've been going over today have been one-to-many. So one farm has many cows belong to one farm, and the many-to-many relationship where you have many actors in many films. Okay, last question. So which fields should you create in every table of your FileMaker solution? Fantastic. You all got that right. Brilliant. Well done, guys. Yeah, absolutely. A primary field should be in every table. So that's a one field that you don't display on the forms anywhere, but is unique, is never empty. What was the other one? Unique, never empty, and I can't remember the third one. I'm gonna have to go to the keynote. Mike, help me out. Let's go back to the keynote. Which one was it? I'm forgetting my own. Never changes, of course. Yes. There you go. Okay, great. Thanks a lot, guys. Right, so like I say, there's I've added the solution, the FileMaker solution architect PDF that was written by a third-party developer. Very comprehensive, quite advanced. So may just be worth having a look to see what is possible within the relationship graph and the theory there. Just for those of you that want to keep that for when you get to that stage of your development. But definitely one of my advices is you should have already sort of downloaded and looked at the FileMaker Training Series Basics one. There is one that you have to purchase off our website, which is around about £12, but well worth it. A lot of effort and time have gone into the book, and goes into lots of different chapters around reporting. Sorry if you can't hear me over the rain and storm that's just suddenly come on. So yeah, it has a lot of demo files, videos, and a PDF, but it has a lot of information in there about relationships and designing relationships and designing a file. So I'd really recommend you have a look there as well for a more sort of slow-paced self-learning. Okay, so thank you for joining us today. I hope you got some good information out of this one. Our next one is within 2 weeks and covers user interface. So please join us for that one. And if you are sort of new to the platform, this is your first couple of weeks or even a month looking at FileMaker, please. Sorry, I forgot to stop the poll. I do apologise for that. Thank you for whoever pointed that out to Mike. So let's just go back a few. Yeah, training series advance. So sorry, you heard me talk about it. There's the front page there, but that's available on our web store. Our next webinar, like I said, is in 2 weeks' time at the same time. And if you are new to the platform, please jump onto our forum pages that are linked off of our website. Sign up. It's free to sign up, of course, but and then you can post on the forum to ask for advice. But we also have a sort of special side of it that is this success program, which has been moderated by a couple of guys internally, and they will answer your questions and try and really get you going to help you build your first solution. So start small, pick a small part of your business or small part of your problem, and try and build up a little solution where you can connect your desktop to WebDirect, whatever it may be that you want to sort of get over and have a look at, and they're there to help you out in those first steps. But if you want to go further, if you're looking for some intense training, intense in the pleasurable way, of course, I would really recommend one of our training partners called Transmedia. They have offices, a couple of offices in London and one in Bristol. Really nice guys, and have a range of training courses from beginner, intermediate, and advanced, or specialising in iOS sort of app development on FileMaker Go, or help with passing your certification, which of course is out there when you get to the level and you want to sort of have a professional sort of qualification against your name. The FileMaker certification is out there as well to take and pass.